part of this talk is going to be a little intense. And that's because the topic I'm going to talk to you about is going to be extremely intense and important. But at those times, I want you to ask yourself, what is the best way for you to actually go about solving them? You're studying in one of the best universities in the world, right? You're extremely prestigious and lucky, and you work really hard to be here. And now you have this amazing opportunity to graduate and eventually change the world. So everything that I tell you today, view it as from the lens of how can you use this in order to make the world a better place? How can you actually solve these problems? I tell you a lot about my story, and the reason I do this is because, as I will show you, I had a very convoluted path in order to get here. My bachelor was chemical engineering, so during my bachelor I was working with petroleum, and there was a big oil spill. And I said, well, I don't like this, I want to work on environmental stuff because I really care about the environment. How many of you care about the environment in this room? All of us, all right. So at the same time, I went to college in University of Tehran in Iran. And you know, I think college is about the time where you start realizing that the world is a shitty place. And that was certainly the case for me. Before, University of Tehran is one of the best universities in my home country. So you have to, like, there were times in my life I had to study for 14 hours a day to get there. And you know, at that time, you don't have bandwidth to think about everything that is going on in life. University of Tehran is also the center for a lot of political activities. And in this picture, students are happy because it's a stock image. In reality, sometimes it looks like this. We had a lot of protests, and in this particular case, students, I was amongst them, so we were on this side of the gate was locked, and we were peacefully protesting. And there was a guy who came here, and all he did, he just showed us a peace sign. And the next thing I know, the paramilitary forces attacked him and started beating this guy in the head with baton. And that was the first time I actually see that kind of injustice in front of my eyes. And the fact that you couldn't do anything about it, and then you ask yourself, how can I help? That was my introduction to actually doing human rights activism. And that day, as I thought things couldn't get any worse, paramilitary forces actually broke inside the university, and they had tear gassed us. So I was tear gassed. As I was running, I just saw a group of people who appeared in front of us, and somebody raised his hand with a machete and said, "Motherfucker, wait." And that was my cue to know that this is not a student, and I better run as fast as I can. I've never come that close to actually getting killed. And I remember half an hour after that, I was still shaking. And because of my political activities, actually, just fighting for human rights, and a few other reasons, I'm gay, I'm not religious. So if you're born in Iran, you're by default Muslim, but I'm not Muslim. I'm not religious. So that alone can get me killed in my home country. So I can't go back. Another thing that happened during my college experience is that some of my friends said, "Faraz, you should come and play music in hospitals." So that's me. I play piano, organ, bagpipes, and accordion. And so they said, let's grab your accordion, not bagpipes, probably not a great idea, and go to hospitals and play for children. And it was really hard for me to do that because I'm shy and introvert, and actually every time I give public presentations, a part of me dies. But I think that we should always push ourselves out of our comfort zone and do what needs to be done. And so when I was there, I interacted with a lot of kids. We told ourselves that we shouldn't really bond with these children so that we don't get hurt. Because they were terminally ill, so literally next week we would go there, and they're not there, and you sort of don't want to ask what happened. So after this experience, again, I asked myself, what is the best thing that I can do with my life, with my career? And the question was is clowning the best thing to help cancer patients? Surprisingly, there were other things I could do, such as studying cancer. So I came to Texas. I studied cancer research in one of the best cancer institutes. I did my doctorate in cell physiology and molecular biophysics. This is nuclear magnetic resonance, X-ray crystallography. I actually studied proteins that are involved partly in repairing muscle cells, published on that, published in Nature. And then after my doctorate, I actually work in biopharma because, again, I was asking myself, how can I apply my expertise in protein structure and function to help people? And at the time, COVID-19 was a thing and zoonotic diseases were a thing. So I wanted to use my background to do that. So here I'm working on influenza and COVID-19. But about 14 years ago, everything changed. So as all of this is happening, for a while I lived in Germany, and when I was there, I was trying to rescue a bunch of animals. And one of my friends said, Faraz, you're a hypocrite. And I was like, ouch. She was actually from Iran, and Iranians, we are very nice. We're really bad at saying no. So we would do anything to avoid saying no to someone else. But my friend actually said no, and I was butthurt. I was like, so I didn't like my friend for 3 months. And then I realized that she actually had a point. And the point was that I can't say I love animals if I'm eating them. But that opened my eyes into this whole nother world that I want to discuss with you today. For instance, when I was working on zoonotic diseases, where do zoonotic diseases come from? You can hear it. Animals, zoos, right? So zoonotic diseases from animals. So you think about bird flu that's going around right now. It's not coming from penguins, it's coming from chickens. But what if the chickens were cage-free? What if they were backyard chickens? Does that solve the problem? Turns out, according to CDC, the current bird flu that's going around is actually from backyard poultry as well as factory farms, or other forms of like infectious diseases. So clearly, going from like factory farms to small farms is not a solution for pandemics, for zoonotic diseases, things like that. And so when I learned that a lot of things that I cared about come back to the food, I decided to use what I knew, which was protein in terms of like biomedicine. But proteins are proteins, right? So I said, how do I feed the world with proteins? That's why I started working on cultivated meat or lab-grown meat. Raise your hand if you've heard of lab-grown meat. Almost everyone. So if you don't know what it is, so this is not a slaughtered meat. This is real meat, but it's not from a slaughtered animal. In lab-grown meat or cultivated meat, you take the stem cells from animals, you put it in cultivators. They're bioreactors, but people freak out when they hear bioreactors, so they say cultivators. And then you basically make chicken, steak, sausage, whatever you like to eat. It's real meat without causing the exploitation and killing of the animals. And it doesn't cause pandemics and zoonotic diseases. So park that. Now, I want to tell you a little about the #1 cause of death in our species. Because if you want to go to medical school, if you care about humanity or any other cause that relates to humans, then you have to ask yourself, what is #1 cause of death in our species? What's that? Heart failure, heart disease. What's your major? Biomedical engineering? All right, you're right. So top causes of death, heart disease, cancer, and then you have diabetes. These are lifestyle diseases, meaning that we can actually prevent them. I'm not saying that if you go vegan, you don't get heart disease. That's not my point. But these diseases are highly linked to animal consumption. For instance, what causes heart disease? So if you have heart problems and you go to doctor, the cardiologist would tell you to watch what on your blood test? Where does cholesterol come from? Meat, eggs, dairy, but worse than that is actually saturated fat, because saturated fat in your blood, in your body, it turns to LDL or bad cholesterol, right? But the problem with medical education and medical system is that they try to do heart surgery and they try to give you some medication, but they never tell you that maybe you should watch your diet. Let's talk about cancer too. So I did my master's on cancer research. No one really told me about like the dietary aspect of cancer. So you can actually prevent about 40% of cancers with with lifestyle choices. So diet and exercise mainly. Raise your hand if you know someone who suffered from heart disease, diabetes, or cancer in your friends and family. It's like all of us. It shouldn't be that way. Like most of these diseases shouldn't happen. Literally, and this is not a vegan organization, by the way. This is a World Health Organization. And as you can see, it's not just processed meat. It's also red meat. And I challenge you, find any cancer institute. It will tell you eat more fruits, vegetables, legumes, seeds to reduce the risk of cancer, and also avoid alcohol, processed meat, red meat, and sugary drinks. And this is from Journal of Meat Science. This is not by vegans. It's actually a meat industry paper. It actually talks about different ways that meat can cause cancer. One of them is stuff that they add to processed meat, but then you have heme iron, and then you have high temperature cooking and stuff like that. So every time says, I'm worried about not getting enough proteins on a plant-based diet, I'm like, what we should actually be worried about is cancer, heart disease, and other things when we do get our proteins from animal sources. And even when you think of not processed meat and you're thinking about like steak or chicken or fish, when you cook meat at high temperatures, you're increasing the risk of cancer because you're producing these compounds. And a lot of people are worried about getting enough protein from plant sources. Have you heard of complete protein? That's a thing that people say. What do you think complete protein means? It contains all the 9 essential. So if it's incomplete, does that mean that it doesn't include any one of those amino acids? Is that what you were saying? Is that what you were going to say? Yeah, so it suggests that if it's incomplete, it's going to lack certain amino acids. That's completely false. All plant proteins have all 20 amino acids. There are 20 amino acids. None of them are essential. All plants have all amino acids. It's all about the ratios. But even with that bad definition, soy is still a complete protein. Hemp is still complete protein. And in this graph, you're looking at these are animal-based foods. These are all the plant-based foods. Each color is a different amino acid. And as you can see, the only thing that is different is the ratios. So the only way that as a vegan you would not get enough of one of the amino acids is like if you just ate rice and nothing else in your life, right? But let's be real. Like, ask any doctor, find any doctor. When was the last time that they were in emergency room and they brought someone, they're doing CPR, and they're like, what happened? They're like, I just didn't get enough protein. What would you find generally if you go to hospitals? How many people are dying from like B12 and protein deficiency? But what you're actually finding is people dying from heart disease, cancer, diabetes. And that's Patrik, that's Chris Paul, and these guys can show you that you can actually definitely not only get enough protein, but be a top athlete without eating animals. And the last thing I want to say about health is this paper, because it's a very big study. It's coming from some of the best nutrition scientists from Harvard, like Walter Willett. They looked at 130,000 people, and they followed them for over 30 years. What they found is they replaced a tiny fraction, 3% of animal protein with plant-based protein, and that's what they found. You may actually wonder, so what about like maybe vegans and vegetarians, maybe they exercise more, maybe they're more health conscious, maybe they don't smoke. They canceled that out. They adjusted for smoking, BMI, physical activity, alcohol consumption, and even socioeconomic class. What they found is this forest plot. So everything on this side favors replacement of animal-based protein with plant-based protein. Everything this side is the other way. And this is a risk factor, right? And here you have all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and other causes of death. So I want you to pay attention right here. This is processed red meat. Then you have unprocessed red meat. Then you have poultry and fish and eggs and dairy. All-cause mortality always is lower when you replace any of these animal products, including fish, with plant protein. And look at this. So a lot of athletes say, I'm eating a lot of eggs because I'm trying to get my main source of protein is eggs or meat. But here is eggs, right? Eggs and cancer is this guy right here. But I actually don't have to convince you that being on a plant-based diet is healthy or healthier. All I have to show you is that it is possible to be healthy and be vegan. And that's the position of Academy of Nutritionists and Dietetics. It's the largest academy of nutritionists in the world. It says that these diets are appropriate for all stages of life, including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, adolescence, older adults, and for athletes. But they actually provide extra benefits. So they are better for the environment, and they can protect against certain health conditions, like heart disease, type 2 diabetes. These are top causes of death. Most of our GDP right now is going to, like most of the healthcare cost is to pay for preventable diseases. So now I want to actually switch to, now that I established that you can be healthy and be vegan, let's look at this interview. Novak is the best tennis player in the world, in history of tennis, actually. Let's see what he says.
How that's helped you with your health and as an athlete to kind of stay at the top of your game.
Well, I'm very pleased to be plant-based and play on this level. You know, people around me didn't really think that I could do that. It is a lifestyle more than just a diet, because you have ethical reasons as well. You know, being conscious of what is happening in the animal world, and you know, the slaughtering of animals and farming and everything that is obviously a huge impact also on the climate change that maybe people don't talk about as much. So you know, it's more than a performance reason for me. It's a lifestyle. Really, it's an approach. It's something that I'm really proud of, and hopefully that community grows even more. Hopefully, I can inspire other athletes that it is possible to be plant-based and to recover well, to have strength, to have muscles. I mean, I'm not a weightlifter, of course, but I do have an optimal balance between the strength and power and speed, and you know, nothing seemed to be missing. I mean, at least from my experience. So I will keep on enjoying that.
So what I love about this is that you can be a high-performing athlete without eating animals. So if it is possible to be somebody like him, somebody like Patrik, then what excuse do we have to eat animals? So for the next part, park everything that I said. The lecture is just about to start. The reason that I focus on this is because what we do to these animals is the biggest form of injustice of all time. Why is it an injustice? The second that you establish that it's no longer a necessity for us to eat animals, then you have to ask yourself, why do we do that? Taste, pleasure, convenience. We want to get along with the society. Maybe it's our culture. Maybe that's what dining hall is offering. But you tell me, what justifies causing so much pain, suffering, and exploitation? It's been 30 seconds and we are already over 1 million fish. And so the way I think about it, the reason that after doing all that stuff from my undergrad all the way after my postdoc, the reason I'm talking about animal rights and veganism is because statistically, logically, rationally, mathematically, show me something that causes more death, suffering, torture, and exploitation. I will shut up. I will go do that right now. But I don't think it's our fault that we are eating meat, eggs, dairy. I think we grow up in this society. Vegans, can you actually raise your hand? Keep your hand up if you were born vegan. We all grew up in this society. We all started eating meat, eggs, dairy. At some point, you had to ask yourself, why are we doing that? And I think we are almost like a victim of this industry here because you're always exposed to this humane washing. They put this on, like, do we really think that animals in the slaughter line are just like laughing? Is that really what we think? But that's what you're exposed to. And I know that this happened to me because when I was a kid, I would do anything. I loved animals, right? This was my chicken. His name was Happy, and Happy was actually the first English word that I learned. As Happy grew up, he became this loud rooster, and we couldn't keep him, so we had to give him to my grandma. So that's her place. Every time I went there, Happy was excited. I opened the door, he jumped at me, we cuddled, and he was my best friend. Until one day I go there, open the door, no sign of Happy, and I ask my grandma, like, where is Happy? And she says, dear Faraz, I'm so sorry, the door was left open, he ran away. And I cried. I was like, he loves me so much, why would he run away? And 10 years later, it turns out that my grandma actually killed Happy and put it in the chicken soup that was fed to me. And I was really mad. I thought that she betrayed my childhood, lied to me, killed my best friend. But the crazy thing is that day I actually knew I had chicken. I remember the chicken bones in that soup. But I just didn't think that was happy. But what difference does that make? I talk to a lot of people who say I'm 95% vegan, or I don't know. Like, you would never go home and look at your dog and you're like, sorry buddy, time to go. Right? You don't look at dogs and cats and certain animals as food, but you are in this society where you get conditioned to look at animals like this. I want to show you more about where this conditioning actually comes from. So I want to show you a few kids.
I don't want to eat them ever again.
Oh, what do you think? So what will you eat instead?
I want to eat whatever there's on the table, but not chicken or meat.
Why do you think why do you think you don't want to do that?
Because they're animals and I like animals.
So what will we do if we miss eating chicken and meat?
I don't miss eating chicken and meat.
How about fish?
Fish?
Yeah.
Fish? Is it an animal?
Yeah.
I won't eat that either.
Oh my God. So what?
I won't eat animals.
Okay.
They taste good and they have protein and they're good for you. Oh, sorry.
And I won't make you eat the food because I don't want to argue with you.
Would you like if someone ate you?
No, I wouldn't.
Well, then why should I eat this poor harmless animal?
Okay, but do you understand what I'm saying? We didn't kill this animal. It's good for your body. Jesus created animals for us to eat. Baby, do you understand? I just want you to be healthy. It's food, baby. I'm not hurting you. It's food.
Well, you're hurting the animal.
I did not hurt the animals. Good girl. Alana, eat it, chew it, and drink your water. Quick, quick.
Now, the reason I show you this, and Patrik is actually a psychologist, so he can talk to you about this a little more. But the reason I show you this is because when I was a kid, I actually didn't like meat when I was very small. And then, parents told me that I have to have meat to be strong, to be healthy, just like that. And by the time I was 22 years old, and when my friend said that you're a hypocrite, you should stop eating meat, eggs, dairy, I was like, I can never go vegetarian because I was like hooked on eating animal-based foods. But these are like 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, I don't know, I don't understand children, but however old they are. Now I have to lecture in like Harvard, MIT, and Yale and have 2-hour-long discussions with people whether fish are swimming vegetables or they are like animals, right? A 6-year-old understands it. Like, the mom says, "What about fish?" And she's like, "Fish are animals," right? That's how little, like when we don't have that cognitive dissonance, that's how obvious it is. And we used to be animals' best friends. We used to do anything to protect them, right? When we were kids, if somebody actually showed us that this is a dead animal and this is how they died, most of us would not be eating animals. But as you can see, like parents say, it's good for you, it has protein, it's healthy, it tastes good, and Jesus put animals here for us to eat. Or what was the last one? Yeah, we didn't kill this animal, we didn't harm this animal. So we put this idea. You can't believe me. Sometimes when you tell kids that this is a dead animal, this is a slaughtered animal, they're surprised, they're shocked because they don't think about it. And even now, in top universities, when I talk to students, 99% of students don't know or haven't thought about it. I don't judge them because I didn't. That all male chickens have to be killed, even if it's cage-free, even if it's pasture-raised. Male chickens, they don't lay eggs, killed. Male cows or calves, they don't produce milk. I'm just coming from Yukon, and we actually did an investigation in their dairy barn. You don't find male cows in dairy industry because they're all sold for slaughter. Female ones are kept here, and that's exactly what I found in Yukon. And you have to ask yourself, how are their mothers getting pregnant? Like, I had someone who had to fact check me the other day at one of these, I think it was at Brown. That was the first time this student had to think about the fact that only female cows produce milk. He had to pull out his phone and check it, because for most of us, cows are these milking machines. They always produce milk, right? But you have to ask yourself, even if it's grass-fed, organic, cage-free, it doesn't matter. What happens to male cows, and how do they get pregnant? Like, dairy industry is fundamentally based on exploitation of reproductive system of cows. And do you guys know what ag-gag laws are? Raise your hand if you know, if you've heard of ag-gag laws. 4 people. That's the reason why we are here today, right? Because it's easy to eat meat, eggs, dairy because you don't have to see the cruelty. The reason that you can't see it is ag-gag laws criminalize if a whistleblower actually goes inside an animal farm and shows the public what happens. So meat, eggs, dairy industry aggressively fight to prevent public to actually see what happens. So what are they trying to hide from us? So I want to show you 3 minutes of standard practice. It's going to be tough to watch, but please don't turn away, even if you're vegan. Even if you're vegan, please look at this. I will watch it with you. And for 3 minutes, I ask you to please be silent and don't get up so we don't disturb anyone. Thanks for watching. I know it's not easy, but I can't forgive myself if I stand in front of you and talk to you about health and environment when the actual victims are them. And let's be honest, if every time that you had to have a little meat, eggs, dairy, you had to see this, would it be as easy? Would you go for that little piece of cheese? And maybe before coming to this lecture, you had an excuse. Maybe you didn't know, just the same way as I didn't know. But after today, you don't have an excuse. So what is it gonna be? When you leave today, even if you're vegan, please listen. After you leave today, if you consume meat, eggs, dairy, leather, fur, stuff like that, just know that this is what you're supporting, even if you don't want to, but that's where your money goes. Your second alternative is to go vegan, but I hate that veganism is even a word. It shouldn't be. It just shows you that animal exploitation is so commonplace that we need a word for like describing that I'm not a part of it. We don't have a word for describing someone who's not racist because we're not supposed to be racist, but now I have to identify as vegan. But it just shows you the second thing that you can do is to just go vegan and just say, you know what, I'm not a part of it, but I let the society just go about it. But the third thing that you can do is to have that anger and fire and frustration of this is happening. So think about it this way. Every single chicken here could be someone like happy. Think about an animal that you cared about, you know? Think about that and imagine like if we killed 50,000 of them every second. 50,000, 50,000, 50,000. Show me something that causes more death and suffering, I'll stop. I'll go do that. And you know, I was talking to a student. She was like, I'm 95% vegan. When people say that, I don't think they understand what veganism means. And if there is one take-home message today, don't treat veganism as a diet. It's not a diet. Vegetarian is a diet. Keto is a diet. Veganism is not a diet. It's not about health. It's not about the environment. Veganism is an ethical framework that we don't exploit animals. And if you look at it that way, it doesn't make sense. It's as if like someone says, I'm 95% not racist. It just doesn't make any sense. And it's like, great, so if you say you are 95% of time you're not vegan, then you're vegan, then maybe, like, does that animal die 5%? How does that work? Or maybe you want to switch, and this is why we are here. So we will help you go vegan, but don't look at it as a diet that I'm going to just reduce my consumption. Think about it as a form of injustice to animals. Imagine if I was beating a dog, what would you do? Stop me? Yeah, what if I said, you know, maybe I reduce my dog beating. No beating on Mondays, beatless Mondays. See, I don't say that, you know, less beating is obviously better than more beating, but that's not what I'm advocating. You would not accept that as an excuse if someone said that. If I made a racist joke or racist comment, you would say, Faraz, that wasn't cool, you should apologize. And imagine if I had any of these arguments, like excuses, but you know, yeah, man, you should just watch my dad, he's so much worse. Like I'm doing my best, you know, I'm doing my best. Maybe I donate to Black Lives Matter, right? I donate to Black Lives Matter, that cancels out some of my racism. But that's what we do. We sometimes say we donate to this organization so I can eat eggs. For every single egg, a chicken has to die. Actually, the male chicken and the female chicken as soon as they don't produce eggs. That's injustice. You can't buy that out. And when you think about dairy, we are constantly exposed to dairy propaganda. You should ask yourself, what's in dairy? It's literally meant for a baby cow. It's not meant for us to drink. And please don't fall for certified, I don't know, cage-free, grass-fed, pasture-raised. It's all marketing. I want to show you a few moments of Fairlife, because every time I go to college campuses, I see students grabbing Fairlife. I don't think they're bad people. I wholeheartedly believe they just don't know what goes behind milk.
Yale recovery mission undercover in Arizona, and not just one dairy farm, but two, both supplying Coca-Cola's Fairlife milk and core power. chained and violently dragged away from their mothers at birth, simply for Fairlife and Coca-Cola to profit from the mother's milk.
This whole company, from the very beginning, has been built on great animal welfare, sustainable practices.
These are not isolated cases. As you saw, they looked at 8 farms, and this was a new one. Every couple of years, they do a new investigations. I've gone to dairy farms just like that, right? As long as there is an industry, as long as it's a business that profits from meat, eggs, dairy, exploitation has got to happen. And this is, by the way, cage-free. Cage-free doesn't mean cruelty-free. It's just another marketing that increases the demand. All these marketings, is there any finance or marketing major here? The reason that these companies do that is because now they can actually promote their products as cage-free. They can make the consumer feel better about consuming these animal products. And this is the last thing I want to show you that's hard to watch. But when you walk around, sometimes when you drive around, you see farms like that. Or everyone says, yeah, I know a farmer who doesn't do this to animals. It's because you don't look at the cruel part, right? The fact that they're tagged, veganism says that we shouldn't, animals are not slaves, they're not commodities, they're not objects, you don't tag, you don't put a price on them. You don't see the part when they separate babies, you don't see the castration and so much more. So I'm gonna show you 2 minutes of something that I found after, like I spent maybe 6-7 hours on YouTube looking at this footage like this. These are not factory farms. These are not isolated cases. These are not undercover investigations. These are American farmers proudly teaching other farmers how to do this. If you go to these YouTube videos, the comment section is full of people saying, I love how you're doing this. This is the most, the best way to do it. So again, not undercover investigation, proud farmers.
Now, there's a lot of controversy on whether or not farmers should be using anesthesia. A lot of farmers in the U.S. do not do this because there's really no prescribed anesthesia or pain medication in the U.S. for cattle. That one had some bouncy balls.
It's probably the worst job on the farm. I don't ever look forward to doing it. It's the only thing that gives me a physical sick feeling having to do it. I don't enjoy it, but that is part of it.
Because every time I'm done with my presentation, someone's got to raise their hand and say, what about kosher, what about halal, what about humane, what about this, grass-fed, pasture, backyard farmer, backyard chicken. This is the reality of it, right? So if you guys ask me, I will seriously defenestrate myself. So the good news is, first of all, you can go vegan and it's a lot easier than you think, and all these vegans here will help you. Let me just show you very quick. When you go to grocery stores, all you have to do, in every coffee shop as well, you have almond milk, soy, rice, coconut, oats, and soy milk. Like nobody has to go and squeeze like almond tits to get milk out of them and separate their babies from them. Oreos, they're not health food, but some of the foods that you are familiar with are already vegan. People say, I don't like vegan food. Bro, like French fries, onion rings, pico de gallo, guacamole. They say, I'm a poor student, I can't afford it. All you have to do, so when I go to Chipotle, I get the beans and corn and literally everything. All you have to do is to replace that dead animal with the tofu thingy that they have, sofritas, whatever you call it. I loved lasagna. That was my big mistake. When I wanted to go vegan, I was like, I can't eat the food that I enjoy eating. First of all, you can. If you're wondering about this, I think I identify as Garfield from now on because my favorite food is lasagna. You have peanut butter, pasta, fish, ice cream. So all you have to do when you go vegan is like when you go to that goddamn grocery stores and you want to buy Ben and Jerry's, all you have to do, it's like grab this shit, like turn it around, spend 3 joules, turn this around, buy the one that says non-dairy. That's all you have to do not to pay for dairy industry to exploit animals. Cliff bars if you want an extra boost of protein. Luna bars are vegan. Starbucks favorite drinks are based on oat milk. This Thanksgiving, if you really want to test your strength, instead of paying for 60 million chickens to be killed so that we can give thanks, buy some tofurkey. It tastes great, and then you can cause some massive family drama. But it's worth it. Beyond Meat, Impossible Meat, sausage, burgers, sushi. When you go vegan, you don't have to give up your identity. You don't have to give up your religion and politics and who you are. All you have to leave alone is animals. And this is my guilt pleasure, Doritos. Is being vegan hard? Yes, sometimes my options are limited. Like if I go to gas station, from like 4 flavors of Doritos, only this one is vegan because some reason there is milk and everything. But that's okay. At least I know that I'm not paying for something that I know is wrong. If you think that you're, any excuse that you have, put it on ChatGPT or Google. Say, I'm poor, I'm lazy, I don't have money, my favorite food is lasagna, give me suggestions. I'll figure it out. Chocolate, chicken nuggets, pizza, cheese, lots of protein powders. So if you're an athlete and if you really want to boost your protein intake, just get a vegan protein, that's it. And Just Egg. But before I pass it on to Patrik, it's not just being vegan for you guys. You guys are going to Yale. You are going to be the future leaders, doctors, lawyers, thought leaders, right? I want you to think about anyone who ever changed the society, anyone you admire, MLK, Gandhi, and then ask yourself one simple question. What is that characteristic that you like about these people? Was it the fact that they just went with the flow, or was it the fact that they saw something wrong and then they did the right thing? It takes courage. It wasn't easy to end up at Yale. You had to study hard for it because it was worth it. Sometimes doing the right thing means that you have to work harder for it, but it's absolutely worth it. If you go after today and have meat, eggs, dairy, no one is going to judge you. You're just going to fit in this ignorant society. You'll be fine and you'll be okay. You'll be just fine. But between you and yourself, now that you have the truth, what are you going to do? And if you're vegan, please speak up and educate others, because sometimes all it takes is just to show the truth to people to change. And I'm going to be around. So after this, we're going to have a social, find friends. And if you want to talk about your career, how can you apply what you know to help the world and stop this? Come and talk to me. And yeah, with that, we're going to have Patrik. We are like good cop, bad cop. I'm the bad cop. So it'll only get better from here. So Patrik, thanks. So we brought Patrik from Germany. That's where he lives. Yeah. There you go. Do you want the lights on?
I think I'm okay.
All right.
This one. I'm gonna show. Hi.
Also.
Oh yeah. Good. So I'm gonna show a video anyway. So I think the lights can actually stay for now. Don't fall asleep though. So you actually know everything you have to know. Faraz basically told you everything. So I'm gonna try to just show my pathway into this whole world and into veganism from the perspective of an athlete. And to set the tone a little bit for that, I'm gonna show the trailer to The Game Changers. Some of you have probably already watched it, then ignore it. And if you have not watched it, maybe you can think about watching it later. But I'm gonna show it now because it sets the tone to everything I wanna say. I think I have to do this one more time.
I ate a lot of meat. They showed us commercials. Steak. That's what a man eats. Selling that idea that real men eat meat. Serious man food. But you got to understand, that's marketing. That's not based on reality.
I've been teaching fighting techniques to government agencies for more than 15 years. Then, I got injured. Unable to teach for at least 6 months, I spent more than 1,000 hours studying science on recovery and nutrition, and stumbled across a study about the Roman gladiators.
The gladiators were predominantly vegetarian.
How could the original professional fighters be so powerful, eating only plants?
When I made the switch to a plant-based diet, I qualified for my 3rd Olympic team. I broke 2 American records. I was like, man, I should have done this a long while ago.
When I went plant-based, I wasn't sure if I was going to survive. And I actually became like a machine.
One of the biggest misconceptions in sports nutrition is that we have to have animal protein to perform at a high level. That's just not true.
Sometimes you have to do things that you know your competitors aren't doing.
Today's blood and yesterday's blood. Yeah.
I think this is going to wake a lot of people up. I was recovering better, not getting as sore. This was our best season in the last 15 years, and we had 14 guys on plant-based diets.
We all feel great, have more energy.
Cholesterol was 276. Today, 169.
Whoa, now you're talking. Most guys my age can keep up with the grandchildren. My grandchildren can't keep up with me.
It's not one set of dietary guidelines for improving your performance as an athlete, another one for reversing heart disease, reversing diabetes. It's the same for all of them.
Someone asked me, how could you get as strong as an ox without eating any meat? And my answer was, have you ever seen an ox eating meat? Yeah, so. Yeah, that actually happened. That I didn't invent that interaction. It actually happened in real life. I don't know if you remember, but yeah, none of you is old enough probably. But back in the day, there was something called internet forums. That you know, before Discord and stuff, that was where people would meet and discuss stuff. And it was actually a German bodybuilding forum. And they were, you know, they were discussing how it's possible that I'm as bulky as I am without eating any meat. And in German, there is, if somebody is really muscular, you say they are an ox. Das ist ein richtiger Ochse. And so they were basically saying, how is this guy such an ox without eating any meat? And so I saw that and saw the opportunity, went in and said, well, have you ever seen an ox eating meat? No, I'm fine. Yeah, I think we can turn them on now. That was the only video I'm going to show. So there are different pathways to veganism, obviously. We've talked about the ethical aspects a lot. The environmental aspects are also one pathway that a lot of people take. Is this as visible as it was? Yeah, it's okay, right? You can read everything. And then there's, you know, we also spoke about the health aspects. The thing is, though, ethics is really what's the strongest argument for actually sticking to it and for also talking with other people about it. And so my pathway has been ethics, but I think I had a little bit of a, you know, special kind of road to it, which is why I want to talk about that a little bit. And so, in my case, I did not go vegan right away. I was, like Faraz, I was vegetarian before I went vegan, and I was vegetarian for 6 years. And so the reason to go vegetarian was really, at the time where I made the decision, we had, we were living near a forest, and so we had a lot of wildlife rescue. So there was, I mean, I've always loved animals, and so in this case, you know, there was a lot of wildlife around us, and sometimes you see an animal that is, you know, has an injury or has some other problem, and so we would take those animals in. We would sometimes have them over a few months and then release them again. I want to give just 2 examples. This is Harald. We found Harald. He was basically, it was already getting winter, and Harald was like just like a mid-sized cookie. And so he was not big enough to get through the winter. If hedgehogs are not big enough to hibernate, they don't survive the winter. And so in this case, we took Harald in and we had him over the whole winter, and then in spring we released him. This is Bonnie, our you know, family dog that we had back then, and this is Jakob, or Jacob in English. And so so Jacob, we call Jacob, so I'm gonna say him because I have no idea. With birds it's hard to say, and I also never wanted to intrude Jacob's privacy that much. And so we have no idea if Jacob was a boy or a girl, but we just called him Jacob. And so we had Jacob over 3 months and had a lot of fun with Jacob. Jacob actually learned to speak, and his first word that he learned to say was "aua," which in German is "ouch." And so the reason that was his first word is because Jacob used to spend the evenings with us in the TV room with the whole family, and he would watch TV with us. One of his favorite things was that he would just go sneak to my then girlfriend's father's shoulder. Sometimes he would even sit on the shoulder. And so the poor guy was around, between 60 and 70 at that time. So he didn't have a lot of hair left. And so what Jacob would like to do is just pick one of those hairs that were left and just pull them out. And every time he would do that, my girlfriend's dad would say, "Aua!" So that was the first thing that Jacob learned. He also did a lot of other funny things, but the point is that during the time where we had Jacob, we had to put a lot of time and energy into trying to actually get him back on his feet. He was in a really, really bad shape when we got him. And so at some point I asked myself, how does this make sense that I'm putting all this time and energy into trying to help this one specific bird, but I might have actually eaten 20 to 30 chicken in the same time period? And so obviously it did not make sense, and we already saw that the problem is really that when we consume animal products, we don't see any of the horrific stuff that needs to happen for those products to exist, right? So that is not being shown to us. It is literally systematically hidden and suppressed by the industry, because obviously, the stuff that Faraz showed you is probably not gonna be very appetizing when you think next time about those products. So the industry does not want those images to come out. And so when I was buying animal products, I wasn't really connecting the dots. But the problem is, once you get to the point where you start thinking about those things, it is really hard to go back and suppress that knowledge that you have at that point. So for me, that just meant it really came down to the question, would I kill the animals that I'm eating? Would I kill them myself? And I knew I wouldn't. And so I thought, well, then I'm dishonest if I pay someone to do something that I wouldn't do myself. So I just stopped eating meat. And at that time, I thought that is fixing the problem. Basically, I thought, well, if I'm not eating meat, then I'm not causing animals to be killed. And if that's the case, then that solves the problem. Obviously, we saw what happens in the dairy industry. We saw footage of what happens to the birds in the production of eggs. So if you know all of that, which I learned with time during those 6 years of being vegetarian, you know that as a vegetarian, you're really not doing a lot. Like in my case, I just replaced all my meat consumption with dairy consumption. And so that's just basically going from one kind of exploitation to the other kind of exploitation. You're really not reducing any suffering, you're not reducing any exploitation or anything. You're just switching from one form to the other. And so once I knew that, which was probably, I think, 5 years in or something like that, what was really holding me back was that when I made the decision to go vegetarian, my athletic performance wasn't really an important part of my life. So I made the decision actually expecting a decrease in performance, but I didn't care because the ethics were just more important to me. But when it came to the point where I understood I had to actually go one step further, I was in a different situation. And I was in a different situation because during that time that I was vegetarian, I actually also started doing strongman competitions. And I won the lightweight title in Germany in 2007 and 2009. And then in 2010, which is basically where I kind of started connecting all the dots and knowing what I should do, I had actually just switched from lightweight to heavyweight. And so In the first year of being heavyweight, I became runner-up champion, and then the year after, in 2011, I actually won the title of Germany's strongest man as a vegetarian. And the problem with that was that at that time, I realized that I had a lot of media coverage at that time, so I was actually reaching a lot of people, and I was getting feedback from people saying that I was basically inspiring them to go vegetarian. And knowing that as a vegetarian I was not really doing what I wanted to do, that put me into a really, really problematic position. Because not being in line with your values and just doing something as your personal self is one thing, but if you know that you're a role model for other people, then at least in my case, that put a lot of pressure on me to do a better job. And that was really the reason that I went vegan, not knowing what would actually happen. So the problem was there were no vegan strongmen before I did it. There were pretty much no powerlifters on my level. There were some bodybuilders. There were actually also some powerlifters, but they were like not nearly on the same performance level that I was on. And so I had no idea if it's even possible, if you even can do what I was doing on a vegan diet. And so because of all that pressure after winning the title, I decided to do it anyways. And what then turned me into an activist is how easy it was and how great it was, how great I was feeling, how great it was for my performance, but also for my health. It actually fixed a ton of problems that I had as a vegetarian. So as a vegetarian, I had a whole host of problems. I'm going to come to them in a second. But this is just, so the box at the top is basically just some records and titles that I won after going vegan. So I've been a meat eater for the first 12 years of my career. I was vegetarian, as I already said, for 6 years. This is what happened in the 5 last years of my career before I retired in 2016. So what I want you to focus on, though, is these PRs, because winning titles and records is not really just dependent on your own performance. It also, you're comparing yourself to other people, right? And so what's really, the actual point is that the PRs, so the personal records, these are all set in 2016, which means that in 2016, in all the big lifts, I was the strongest I ever was, and that is 5 years into being vegan. So that proves that, have any of you competed in any sports at some point in your life? Okay, so we have actually competitive athletes here. So if you change your diet to a diet that is not adequate, how long is it going to take for you to feel that? Weeks? Couple of days, weeks, right? And so to think, because there's a lot of people who say, well, this guy has been a meat eater for such a long time and so on, so maybe he just built all of that and then he was just maintaining what he had from the meat. That is completely, that doesn't make any sense. If there was anything wrong with the diet, I would have felt it right away. I would not be able to build on the strength that I had for another 5 years and get stronger every year. So that's really the point I want to make. But, and then in 2016, I retired after I had a tear, my tricep basically tore at log lift at a World Championships in log lift. And so after that injury, I retired. But the great thing was I didn't have really any bad feelings about retiring, because at this point, my main goal had been to make it easier for other athletes and other people to go vegan. And at this point, there were literally hundreds of athletes in all kinds of strength sports, in powerlifting, in bodybuilding, in strongman. Actually, there was a strong woman who, I think around 2 years after I did the world record in the Game Changers, the yoke world record, there was actually a vegan strong woman who did the exact same world record, which I found was the coolest thing ever. But the great thing was there were actually athletes out there who were stronger than I was, more impressive than I was. So I knew I was retiring, but there were other people doing what I was trying to achieve. So at this point, I also thought, as a psychologist, I can maybe do something else with my life than just to lift things up and put them down. And so I opened the next chapter in my life. But I want to really, really quickly get back to when I said I was never healthier than before. So this was all just about performance. We also already talked about all the health things, so don't worry, I'm not going to go through this whole list. I want to just stress one thing as an example of things that improved after going vegan. So the second point here says iron example. What that means is I was actually chronically iron deficient as a vegetarian. Have any of you been vegetarian for a time in your life? Okay, has any one of you, because I meet a lot of people who actually had the same thing. Have you had iron deficiency? Okay, yep, almost all of you. So I was chronically iron deficient as a vegetarian. Because I'm saying this because a lot of people think, oh, veganism sounds extreme. Maybe I'm gonna do like a little, I'm gonna go there a little bit, because like vegetarianism doesn't sound as extreme. Let me tell you something, if you wanna be healthy, do the vegan thing, because the vegetarian thing has a ton of problems. Because like dairy, if you replace your meat with dairy, you're not going to be healthier than before. You might actually end up being more unhealthy than before. So don't even do it. It's a waste of time. It's a trap. So the iron deficiency, I would go to a doctor. I would get an iron supplement. I would take the supplement, 3 months, go back, get blood work, still deficient. That went on for the whole 6 years that I was vegetarian. It got completely fixed after going vegan. Turns out the dairy was causing the problem. Now, to be fair, I have to say I had a ton of dairy, but we already saw that there's several people in the room who had the same problem. So although I was a really bad case, I was not the only case. A lot of vegetarians are going to have the same thing. So dairy blocks iron absorption. Dairy does that, black tea does that, coffee does that. Are you getting nervous yet? So I still drink coffee, don't get nervous. So with the coffee, I think it doesn't seem to be as potent as the dairy, but I'm also doing something to make sure that it doesn't get in the way. So in the mornings I have a protein shake and I take a multivitamin with that protein shake. I just make sure my first coffee in the morning is an hour away from that multivitamin because it has a little bit of iron in it, and so that way I make sure that there's no interaction between the coffee and that iron. That seems to be all it takes. Like I have, since I get my blood work twice a year, just to be sure, and that's for 14 years, so that's 28 samples of no iron deficiency or any other deficiency since I went vegan. So it is really possible. And then there's another thing that I want to really quickly address, because a lot of people, when they hear about me saying, well, I was actually doing better and I was actually stronger on the vegan diet, they're like, but how is this possible? How can you give up all these options that you have if you're on a mixed diet and basically have a narrower bandwidth of options and then do better? Because as a society, we are so kind of obsessed with the idea of making sure our body gets everything that it needs that we forget sometimes that some of the stuff that we eat gets in the way, like the dairy was getting in the way of the iron absorption. It is not just about what we put into our body, but it's also about making sure that we avoid the right things. And so if you have animal products, you are giving your body like protein, right? In my case, the animal products were mainly protein sources. You are giving your body some good stuff, but it comes in a package with a ton of bad stuff. It comes in a package with cholesterol, comes in a package with stuff that can cause cancer, comes in a package with 80 to 90% of all foodborne pathogens are found in animal foods. So if you now go vegan and you make sure that you still cover all the nutrients, what have you done? You have just gotten rid of all that bad stuff and you're still making sure that you get all the good stuff. Obviously, you're going to do better, right? And so the reason this says B12, by the way, is because that is literally the only thing that you have to supplement. And you don't have to supplement it because there is anything wrong with the vegan diet. You have to supplement it because the natural source of B12, who knows it? Yes, bacteria make B12. So the natural source used to be just eating a ton of dirty stuff and that way getting those bacteria. Obviously, in a world where we have chemicals out there, pesticides out there, it is not a good idea, so please wash your food. So that bacteria that we used to get with dirt, you can just replace that with a supplement and you're fine. The animals get supplements too. Like the animals from factory farming, they get supplements. If it's an animal that is actually outside and eats dirty food, they might get it from the same bacteria we used to. get it from, but B12 is basically the safest supplement. If you take a multivitamin, it's already in that multivitamin. You don't have to worry about it, because there's, you know, all this kind of trying to make people nervous about this. It is really not an issue at all. And so with that, I want to basically come to an end and go for the Q&A, but there's one more thing that I want to stress. So my life has been all about, you know, being fascinated and chasing physical strength. Now that has a lot of reasons. I have some issues that have to do with how I grew up and what happened to me as a child. And so, you know, I had a pretty traumatic and pretty wild childhood. If you've watched the Game Changers, you might have heard about some of the stuff. And so, so as a child, I also grew up with a lot of superhero stories, with cartoons and with comic books. And so that used to be my coping mechanism in my childhood. When the world was horrible around me, I would just try to escape in those in that fantasy world where I would imagine myself as being super strong and being, you know, having these powers that I could protect everybody with, and that I could make the violence and make all the bad stuff that was happening stop. And so at some point in my life, I learned that, oh, if you actually train, you can actually become strong. And so strength, in my case, physical strength, for me was always about how can I use that to actually protect others? How can I use that to actually do something good in the world? Because otherwise, and this is not just about physical strength, no matter what kind of strength it is, if you know, you can be intellectually strong, you can be emotionally strong, you can be spiritually strong. There are many ways that you can be strong and you can be powerful, but all of that is pointless if you're not using it for something good. And so the most powerful way that you can use your strength, which one it may be, is to actually go vegan and to actually be outspoken about it. Why? Because you're actually protecting the whole planet, you're protecting all of its sentient life, you're protecting your own health, and you're actually doing something for future generations. There is no more powerful decision that you can make. And so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
The free food wasn't a scam, so there's free food. So we're just going to take a few questions and then have food. And also, before you guys leave, if there are vegans, we're going to do a quick small group discussion about ASAP, so please stay behind. We'll do that. Yeah, so are there any questions before we do the food? Yeah.
As a scientist, what is your perspective on animal testing in medicine and drug development, things like that?
Yeah. Great question. I try to make it short. Majority of animal testing is not necessary. There are a lot of downsides with animal testing. It can mislead you. A lot of things that work in mice and rats, over 90% when you take it to humans, it doesn't work. And also there are things that could actually help humans, but we never explore them because we test them on rats and dogs. First, I think about caffeine. If we tested caffeine first on dogs, then we would have decided that caffeine is toxic for humans, right? So that's one thing. So the alternatives that we have can be actually potentially better, cheaper, safer for people, and also they spare the life of animals. Yeah, it's a long discussion, but I would say if you're not vegan, the first thing is like the obvious thing is meat, eggs, dairy, that's like literally in front of you. But when you look into animal testing, it's very cool. Working in a lot of places that do that. And at the end of the day, it's like one of those things. If you don't give me your dog to, you know, pour chemicals in their eyes and stab them, it's really cool. And in majority of cases, like I said, unnecessary, and it can hold science back. So the real question is, maybe in the past we used them because we didn't have better alternatives, but today we do. Like AI. Everything I did for my doctorate is by this point, it's almost like useless. And that was like less than 10 years ago, right? Just because AI is like taking over. So the technology we have today can easily replace much of animal testing. Does that answer your question? What was your major?
Well, I'm a freshman, but I'm thinking of doing biophysics and biochemistry.
Yeah. I'll be happy. That was exactly my major, so happy to chat more.
So like, as more people turn vegan and like just to like increase the supply of vegan like meat alternatives, like what are the barriers to like expanding that beyond what it is today? Because like it won't be the same methods that are used
Yeah.
to supply food today.
So I answer that two ways. One is to realize that most of the resources that we currently have goes to animal farming. So 79% of all agricultural land on Earth, 79% of that goes to either raising animals or growing food for those animals. And much of it is soy and corn that people can directly eat. And that produces only 20 to 30% of global calories and proteins. But it means that we are wasting much of the resources. So if today all the world went vegan, we would free up so much land and resources, right? But the main barrier is consumption. Today, every coffee shop has almond, soy, and what's the other one? Oat milk. I've been vegan for 14 years. 14 years ago, it wasn't like that at all. So why is that? It's because more people like us are making better choices. So I would say consumers drive the demand, right? And the
I was like asking more of like the engineering perspective. Like you talked about like the incubator for like making artificial meat. Like what are the barriers to like expanding that and like producing more of that?
Okay, so the whole thing is under the category of alternative proteins. That's anything that is not like slaughtered meat, right? So you have plant-based, that's one of them. So like Beyond Burger or Impossible. So you can make them better. You can make them healthier. You can make them taste better, whatever, right? So you can still do research on that. But the other thing is also cultivated meat or lab-grown meat. The main challenge there is to make bioreactors cheaper and to scaling up. It's going in the right direction. The first burger that was produced was, can you guess how much it costed? In 2013, it costed about $300,000 to $400,000 for one burger. That was like a proof of concept that we can make meat outside of an animal's body. Today, it's about $20 to $30 per pound. Less than 10 years, in about 10 years, right? So it's going in the right direction, but the main challenge is pretty much innovation and money. Money, basically money, because I think that if somebody like Elon Musk decided that instead of going to Mars, cultivated meat has to be a thing by next year, it will happen. It only needs more researchers.
Yeah. Patrik, what did your diet look like in 2016 when you were at your peak?
Yeah, when I was at the peak. Yeah, so actually I think what's important to me is to make the point that it wasn't actually that different to the time where I was eating meat. Because when I was still a meat eater, I used to eat a lot of chicken sweet sour. Now I eat tofu sweet sour, right? And so the only difference between those two things is the chicken is out, tofu is in. Everything else is the same, right? And so my diet actually as a vegan was not, as a vegetarian was a little bit different because there was a lot of dairy going on. But as a vegan, actually, my diet is not that different from the time where I was a meat eater. And even things like, like an egg scramble. There is a specific kind of egg scramble that my mom used to always make for me with tomato and with curry in it. And I used to love that stuff. I just make the same thing now as a tofu scramble, basically. And that's also an important part. Is like there are all these fancy meat alternatives, but really, tofu can almost replace all of that stuff. You don't have to go with those, fancy things that cost a lot and are ultra processed. Tofu really can pretty much replace anything. So tofu is a staple. And then with the dairy, it was also that I really liked milk back in the day. And so now I just drink soy milk. And soy milk is the only plant milk that is really one-to-one equivalent when it comes to the protein amount and the protein quality to dairy milk. And so that's why I just, and it's also fortified with vitamin D and calcium. So you can literally just one-to-one replace dairy milk with soy milk. So as you can see, the pattern, there's basically just one thing replacing the other thing, but the diet itself is not that different. I also eat a lot of Indian foods because I like spicy things. So one of my favorite foods is chana masala. And chana masala is a good example for Indian dishes that just have a lot of legumes in them, which is beans, lentils, chickpeas in chana masala, and then peas and all kinds of legumes. And legumes are all super high in protein. And so that's mainly the way that I eat. Now in 2016, when I was still competing, because I'm a really short athlete compared to other heavyweights, that's why I started in the lightweight category, because I never thought I could actually be competitive in the heavyweight category. And so it only after winning the lightweights twice, and in Germany there's this special thing where lightweights and heavyweights actually do the same competition. So you, at the end of the day, you have a placing in your category in the lightweight, but you also have an overall placing. And every time that I won in the lightweights, I was also 5th overall. So only 4 of the big guys were actually stronger. That's why I actually went into heavyweights. And so having to compete against athletes that are vastly bigger than I am, I really had to make sure that I was as heavy and as strong as I could. And so what I would do for that is I would eat the way that I just described as much as I could. And then I would get all the extra calories that I still wanted in, but the appetite wouldn't let me. I would get those in liquid form. So smoothies, protein shakes, just soy milk as liquid calorie source. There's a lot of people actually asking me, how can I, get more calories into my diet? I'm not hungry enough to eat enough, but my metabolism is quick. So the easiest way to do that is just you eat until you're full, and you can always have some soy chocolate milk as a dessert, and that makes it really, liquid calories generally make it really easy to get theoretically unlimited amounts of calories in. That's why, kids who have a problem with, struggle with being overweight, in a lot of cases, it's not because they eat a lot, it's because they drink all these, sodas and all the sugary drinks that just have these liquid calories. So in that case, obviously it's unhealthy, but if you're somebody who struggles with getting enough calories in, that is a really easy way to get them in.
Yeah, maybe one more question about making choices with products. So when I want to buy vegan products, I can really choose between brands that provide like only vegan products and those that have like animal-based products and vegan products. So when I buy products from those brands, am I still supporting the animal industry, or am I helping to convince someone, those people maybe, that I want vegan products?
Well, I'm not perfect when it comes to that. I actually do consume products from brands that also have non-vegan products. The thinking in my case is, please don't judge me. The thinking in my case is that I'm still giving that brand a signal that the vegan product is what I prefer, so I'm still supporting that part of the company. Now, that is a difference to something else. I've been approached by those brands asking me to actually advertise their vegan products. I do not do that. And the reason I do not do that is because nobody sees when I buy one of those products. But if I advertise it, I kind of lose my credibility as an activist, in my opinion. So I do not support these brands publicly, but I do consume the products because my thinking is I'm still supporting kind of the right channel at least. That's just my thinking. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I agree. I do want vegan brands to survive for sure. But I don't think that meat companies, they don't really care what products are selling. They just want money. Basically follow the money. So if they know that there are more consumers wanting the better products, they would ship. In fact, one of the biggest investors in cultivated meat are actually Tyson and Cargill and JBS from Brazil. This is one of the largest meat companies in the world. They're actually investing in cultivated meat. Do they care about animals? Absolutely not. But they see the future, right?
I just wanted to ask, to both of you, what do you think, the culture internationally is? A lot of the examples you showed were, American farms, but, how do you think, other countries that don't have as much, need for mass production of animals, what is their stance on animal ethics and, production?
Should I? Yeah, so I have a little bit of an outside perspective because I actually live in Germany, right? And so in Germany we even have animal welfare kind of law, like it is written in law that you should not do any animal cruelty if there's no good reason for it. Now I as a vegan would not consider eating those animals as a good reason, but apparently the German government and our system thinks differently, and our society thinks differently. The problem is that that law actually has to be enforced, and there is no actual enforcement that is worth the word. So there's basically like a 0.001 chance that you ever, as a farmer, actually get controlled by the government to see if you're treating the animals the way they're supposed to be treated. And even if that's the case, it's still horrible. Like everything that would still go through the legal system and be okay would still be horrible. So while other countries might be a little bit like less extreme than some of the stuff that we saw here, and it could, by the way, also go into the other extreme. Like it could be way worse than what we saw. But even in the countries that have put some of this, some of the stuff that we would want into law, it's still not enforced. That stuff still happens. The culling of male chicks happens in Germany. There was, on the EU level, there was at some point a push to have alternative methods, like finding out before the chick is actually hatched, so that it could be killed before it hatches, if that makes it better. But it never went through. And so
the female ones are eventually killed anyway.
yes, and that is the actual important part is, even if you try to make it better, it's still gonna be horrible, right? Basically, if you have a spectrum here and you make something less horrible, if it's not just freedom, it's still gonna be horrible. And so, yeah, I cannot say that Germany is better, although we actually have law that should make it better.
I would probably categorize Europe, US, Canada, and Australia as like one group.
One
and
block.
I would say these what?
One block, yeah.
Yeah, one block, and I would say these are probably the better countries. So everything else, everywhere else in the world is probably a lot worse. In Iran, for instance, what they do, for male chickens, they literally dig a hole and they literally bulldoze them for male chickens. I've seen that in India as well. I think I have a hunch that there is a correlation between the state of human rights versus like animal rights and free speech. So in this country we have better free speech than probably anywhere else in the world, and still we have our gag laws, and they generally get like struck down because they're not constitutional. But imagine in other countries like Russia and Iran and like so many other Middle Eastern countries. I would say it's probably a lot worse. But it's really like in Iran, the halal way of killing an animal is that you say in the name of God and then you cut their throat, same as kosher. Like, always think about that animal who's being killed and exploited and abused. For that animal, it doesn't matter how they're being killed, whether it's a gas chamber, whether someone is cutting their throat, whether it's stunning, right? They're being killed, they want to live. Does that answer your question? Anything else? Awesome. Oh,
I just have a question. How much tofu do you think you eat every single day?
so much tofu.
It's not that much, but I have a lot of soy products, if that is rather where you want to go. It's not a problem. So it would only be a problem if you don't eat anything else. Like, you should make sure that you eat a ton of other things. But I actually had a conversation today. Somebody approached me and said, well, that person is vegan for 10 years, and said they're having a lot of soy-based protein. And the question was, is that a problem? It's really not a problem. You should just overall make sure that you have a balanced diet and you eat a lot of different things. But soy, specifically as a protein source, it's a really balanced amino acid profile. It's fine. Like, try to also eat other things, but if you eat a lot of soy, there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you can basically take it digestively and it doesn't upset your digestive system. Okay.
All right.
I think you're ready for pizza
So
now.
we're gonna have pizza. Feel free to talk to others, talk to us, find friends. That's one point of this. I hope that you found this helpful. Thanks for giving it an open mind. Please treat this as seriously as you can. The last example I give you is that imagine if you can you think of other things that used to be legal and normal, and today we look back and we're like, what the fuck? Imagine if you were transported to that time. Like I asked myself, if I went back 200 years ago, slavery was legal and normal. I know it's wrong. You know it's wrong now, right? What would you do? Would you just go with the flow? Would you have the courage? Would I have the courage to say that this is wrong and I'm gonna do the right thing? A lot of times when you do the right thing, you're gonna be the minority. So all I'm asking you is that you guys do have the courage to do the right thing. So don't forget that. It's a lot easier to go with the flow and be blind and ignorant and close our eyes and ears and don't look. But please do the right thing and use everything in your power, whether it's your money, you can donate, right? You can use your career for something that is meaningful. You can use your voice. It's free, right? Just educate others. And that's why I started ASAP, because I want to bring this education to tons of other universities, because I hate that I went through college and no one really stopped me. I think if I was in college and someone showed me that, I would have gone vegan immediately. And if you ever in your journey think that being vegan is hard, just think about the animals. Just think about the animals and you have the answer. Cool, let's have pizza, and if you're vegan, please stay back so we can have a good chat.
Of course. Let me just put this away real quick.
Yeah.
Let's put this there.